Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Are UFOs seen just as frequently in populated areas as they are in the middle of nowhere? When they are seen over cities, why aren't there more reports? Why do some people seem to see UFOs in the same place at the same time, and others do not?
Well, hello there, and welcome to the 263rd broadcast of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and asking those questions was my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So, next month will be the 50th anniversary of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction incident in New Hampshire. Oh, Exeter, New Hampshire. Exeter, right?
Yeah, well, just north of there, yeah.
Okay, well, also, we're looking forward to the 3rd annual Exeter UFO Festival on Labor Day weekend. But before we introduce our guest, it's time for our weekly paranormal contest.
Last week's question was, in what year and in what U.S. state did the Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO incident take place?
Pete Fontaine of Omaha, Nebraska got the answer. Montana in 1967. The UFO seemed to be checking out nuclear missiles. Oh, well, doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah.
So this week's question has two parts. Where and in what year did the quote-unquote Falcon Lake encounter take place? So if you get that right, win a copy of my dad's book, Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. If you get the answer before the end of the show, if you want to call in and give the answer, actually, or if you would like to talk with our guest today, call us locally at 401-766-1240 or nationally at 800-449-1240.
Now to our guest. Steve Fermani is founder and director of the New England section of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. His interest in UFOs began in the late 1960s at the age of 20 and expanded into a lifelong relationship with UFO phenomena. Starting as a MUFON field investigator in the early 1970s, Steve has held various positions of responsibility in the organization in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont, before founding the New England organization. He is also a past state director and director of investigations for the International Center for Aerial and Abduction Research. Steve has appeared on numerous local and regional television and radio shows, newspapers, and has lectured widely. A past co-author of the monthly Aerial Space Phenomena
Co-editor.
Review. What?
It says co-editor.
All right, well, a co-editor. Excuse me.
Sorry.
All right. Steve has sat on panels of UFO experts and is a member of the International Academy of Ufology. He lives in Leominster, Massachusetts, and is a co-organizer of the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO Festival, which will take place, as Ben said, on Labor Day weekend, and is actually a charity event. Among Steve's websites, www.exeterufofestival.com.
Steve Fermani, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Well, thank you, guys. Pleasure to hear from you again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yes. Once again, I just want to remind everyone of our call-in numbers today. Locally, 401-766-1240, locally here, of course, and nationally, 800-449-1240 from anywhere in the USA.
Okay, so let's kick off the questions really quick with Steve, probably the biggest news you have for us has to do with artifacts found from the 1947 Roswell, New Mexico crash. So what's going on with that?
Yes, well, what seems to have happened is a local Roswell science teacher, high school level earth sciences teacher named Frank Kimber, K-I-M-B-E-R, set off on his own out to the areas where the Roswell incident allegedly happened. He took a metal detector and scoured the areas for quite a long time, and he came up with not major findings, but tiny fragments of what seems to be metallic objects. Normally, this wouldn't attract much attention, but these fragments have been analyzed, and the mysterious thing is that the organization that funded the testing was the Roswell UFO Museum.
Uh-huh.
And the results according to this study, the results claim that these fragments were not of terrestrial origin.
Okay. It's always been a question in my mind. What constitutes not being of terrestrial origin? In other words, you went to the moon and even Mars, and we find common elements and things like minerals, and I mean, what was there? Can you tell us more about why they said it was not from Earth?
Because the composition.
Okay.
Yeah. Composition. Well, say you have a meteorite, and you analyze the meteorite. You can tell that but most scientists know what Earth-based metals or anything like that. They know what they're composed of, the elements that they're composed of, and what. But a lot of them are composed of the same elements, but it's the amount of certain elements.
Okay. Yeah.
That are different on Earth than they are from outer space. So that's how they can tell the difference.
Okay. But obviously, you mentioned metallic fragments. These are artificially made, right? I'm not going to say man-made.
The only thing they can say, we can't step that far and say that, but it's supposedly not elements that were made on Earth.
Okay.
Now,
all right.
Could it be something from some type of other natural things out in space? It's possible, but they looked at things further and said, "Well, we want to make sure. We want to make absolutely sure that these test findings are true. But maybe there was a mistake at the lab where they did the testing."
Yes.
So the Roswell UFO Museum is also funding a second. At this time, they're funding a second analyzation of these fragments, and so we're waiting for the results on that.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds interesting. Will we see any of these fragments at the Exeter Festival by any chance?
No, we won't.
Okay.
We won't, but if you go on to Open Minds Radio.
Yeah.
Open Minds has an article on it, and they have actually microscopic photographs of the element.
Okay. Well, the festival has developed a lot. Maybe we can get the whole ship at some point. So Ben's got the next. Yeah.
No, you never know. So the Southwest is still a hotbed of UFO sightings and abduction cases as well. So why do you think that is?
Yeah, why there as opposed to somewhere else?
Southwest?
Well, in other words, why the Southwest still seems to be the hotbed. I mean, New England has a lot of activity too, but the Southwest just really. I myself saw the Phoenix Lights from an airplane. And it seems like there's always something going on down there. I mean, why is that such an active area? Mexico too.
That's an extremely good question. But I can tell you, I receive an unlimited flow of UFO reports. It's not like we're at a loss for receiving reports here. So, I mean, but you always ask me every time when I'm going to come on.
Yeah.
Is to talk about some recent sightings.
Mm-hmm.
But it always seems like it's just before Exeter and just after the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And what the 4th of July does to us, it creates, I mean, it's almost like right on time every year. From about 2 weeks before the 4th till about now,
mm-hmm.
everybody starts reporting 4th.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that seems to be true.
Which usually end up being, just as famous as fireworks now with those Chinese lanterns.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what happens to us every year, like clockwork.
Well, funny you should bring that up. I was we generally have a family reunion every year in Connecticut, and it has up until this year. It was actually on the 4th of July, and one of the attendees was he's retired now, but he was a full colonel in the Air Force, and I have some military experience too. So the two of us were standing there one year at the side of a lake. Discussing learnedly what this weird light was across the lake. And it was in the sky, and he was saying, we have landing lights, coming through the clouds there, and I was saying, well, it could be this. Turns out it was one of those Chinese lantern things.
It looks mysterious.
Yeah, and
especially if they're traveling 2, 3, or 4 in a line.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about having confidence in your Air Force. Yeah, exactly. So you just never know what you're looking at. So I'll give you back to Ben here.
Okay, so let's go back to New England. So how common are UFO sightings here as compared to the Southwest?
I think we have just as many. I think earlier on, before New England moved on, there were a loose-knit group of organizations in the 6 New England states, and they were run independently. But now that we've organized all 6 states together, we have a regular flow. We've had in the 6 states, we've had probably about 30 sightings before just this month alone.
Really? Yeah, that's pretty spectacular.
Maybe it has something to do with the people. I like in the Southwest, people are more open to talking about things like this, but maybe up here, and everyone's just like, I don't want everyone to think I'm crazy, so...
Yeah, I've actually found that, Steve, when I've spoken in California, for example, and Ben and I pretty much concentrate on other areas of the paranormal, particularly ghost research, that sort of thing, and people are much more open in the West Coast and in the Southwest than they are here. People are interested here, but they're a lot quieter about it. Do you find that?
Well, actually, I know what that feels like, because when I first started doing this over 30 years ago, every time I mentioned it, people thought I was crazy.
Yeah, oh, sure, sure.
So that changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the people are a lot more open even around here. I don't... more than criticizing people for believing in it now, around here, it's more like people just shut their mouths about it, and they don't want to talk about it if they don't believe in it.
No, exactly.
Rather than criticize.
All right, so we have a long history here in New England. So, how far back do UFO reports go?
Okay. There's a photograph of a UFO back in the 1800s.
Wow.
It was taken by an airship over New Hampshire. It looks almost like a wooden Noah's Ark.
What is it about New Hampshire?
It's just such an old photograph. The quality of the photo, it looks like a lump of wood.
Yeah.
In the snow, but it's supposedly of an object in the sky.
I wasn't aware of that far back. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's way back.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I mentioned this to you yesterday when we spoke, and so I just want to mention it. You said you're not familiar with it, but one of the earliest cases we've encountered, if you could consider it any sort of, there were no UFOs seen that I'm aware of, but there were a lot of weird people involved. We mentioned it on the show before. It was the League of Spectres, as Cotton Mather called it, in 1692, up on Cape Ann in Massachusetts, and these strange people seem to have arrived in the vicinity of this settlement. Of course, things are still pretty rural in 1692, and the military types in the colony assumed these were Frenchmen. Because anybody who was, you couldn't identify must have been French, right? And
right.
A lot of them were dressed in white, and they seemed to be impervious to any sort of attack or bullets or even nasty, pointy weapons. They seemed to be, they would get up and run away, this sort of thing. It was
maybe it was Scott Valet's early relative.
Yeah, well, perhaps. But in any case, so we do have sort of weird things going back that far. And, of course, whether there were lights in the sky, I mean, nobody reported it as far as I'm aware. But I often wonder if this wasn't the genesis of some of the fear that led to the Salem witch hysteria. Because this is about when it began. So who knows? But anyway, there are a lot of strange things in New England, including UFO cases way back. Now, I just wanted to mention that. So, Ben?
Well, that is an interesting point that you don't know how one thing might be related to another.
Very true. Human nature's strange that way.
All right. So, can you tell us about some of the more significant cases that you've investigated in New England?
Reason why I came through initially with the Chinese lantern explanations is because there's been. I'm going to give you two examples of what we've been receiving. One was on 24th, July 24th, about 2:05 in the morning, and someone saw 3 to 4 orange, yellow, whitish objects. The objects moved around in the sky, forming several different shapes, including a triangle, then an L shape, and all bunching together. They totally were not stars because of the size. Now, to me, that's pretty much a group of Chinese lanterns.
Really? There you go.
Yeah, and the second one I have here is 3 satellites crossing overhead, and they put a question mark on it. It said, where? And I did some research, and that the Navy has clusters of satellites. They launch that set up in the sky. They have some of them flying groups of 3, some of them flying groups of 4. As a matter of fact, I think that people ask, what do you have to do as an investigator to keep on top of things?
Mm-hmm.
To keep on top of technology. There's a thing that's nanosail. There's a solar sail that's up in space right now.
Okay.
That can be that can give you the appearance of a UFO.
Yeah.
There's also Lockheed Martin. It just developed a prototype blimp.
Mm-hmm.
One made one, as a matter of fact, made an unscheduled landing last month in Pennsylvania. These things can go up to 32,000 feet in the air. And wait a second. Traffic went down and sends it to 32,000 feet. But this one, they normally can go up to 60,000 feet. Blimp that Lockheed Martin is producing right now.
Pretty high for a blimp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's called the Hale D Project.
Okay.
I mean, there are so many things going on. We're sending up so many things that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
That and that's why with a lot of the high altitude phenomena that we're seeing, guys, these might be some of the reasons, but I'm not saying that all of the reasons.
Yeah. So what criteria do you use to determine whether something really is unidentified? I mean, obviously you've done quite a bit of research to find out what these things might be. Mm-hmm. What if you can't find out? I mean, how many? What's the percentage of your New England cases that you say of the 20-something that you've received this month, or I should say maybe last month in July?
Yeah.
How many? What percentage do you feel are really unidentified?
It's usually about 80 to 90%.
80 to 90% are unidentified.
No, can be identified.
Or are identified. I was going to say that's quite a percentage.
Yeah, that's been the norm throughout history ufology. It's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you can we'll have witnesses that make report, and then they feel it's like they've done their duty to report them. And then when we try and get in contact with them, they don't want to talk to us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So, with those cases, all we can do is look at what they've submitted as a report and make our best educated guess. Because we can't ask all the follow-up questions that we need to ask to rule out other things. So the only thing we can do is make an educated guess that it could have been this, or it could have been that.
Mm-hmm. I remember a case because I was still at the Providence Journal there, working there, and it was must have been 1988 or 1989, and a large craft flew over. It was seen over Narragansett Bay. Was flying northwest and over Cumberland, Rhode Island. Apparently, from one of the witnesses I spoke with, right over our house, which was in the woods of Cumberland at the time, so right over our woods. And then straight out over the Blackstone Valley and out toward into Massachusetts and up toward Quabbin Reservoir, and was ended up over New York State. And people were going crazy. I don't know if you remember this or not, but it turned out that it was a blimp, an advertising blimp that was fully illuminated, but had not had the advertising logos and lettering applied to it yet, and it was flying to New York to have that done. And there was a very good. My wife's best friend called me and said, "Oh, I know you're into this stuff. I saw right over your house and all this." And she said, "People think I'm crazy." Well, I faxed her the AP story because I was in the newsroom with the Journal, and it happened to come right across my computer screen. And I said, "Oh, you're not crazy," although it was not a UFO. So I can see your point that people could just go kind of hog wild with this stuff. Well, I'm hogging Ben's lines here.
Hog wild, hogging my lines.
Yeah, we're thinking like farmers tonight. Okay.
So
one point to make on the blimp thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of my contacts that I've developed over the past 30 years is the captain that launches. He's the controller for all the launches of all the major blimp companies in the country. So if I come up where I feel that it might be a blimp, all I have to do is email this guy. He usually gets back to me that day.
No, well, that makes it easier. Okay.
It does, yeah.
But what about cases in, I guess, that next part of Ben's question, what about the cases in New England that have been unidentified? What can you give us some examples of those?
Well, they're mostly just, I have nothing this year that's anything extraordinary. A lot of them are light in the sky type of things that look like satellites, but I've had a similar, and when I've had a similar experience to what some of these are, and I saw them myself and I couldn't explain it.
Okay,
It seems like a satellite. It's going regular speed as a satellite, and all of a sudden it just zips off, goes zip, 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 gone.
Well, one of the things that's
fast-moving star-like objects, I cannot explain them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one of the, and Ben and I have mentioned this before, one of the most common sightings in the Southwest is that of a triangular craft of some kind. And much has been made of the lights on it, and that the lights seem to be traveling together, and people have seen it almost low to the ground, and it's very silent, and there's been speculation about lighter-than-air craft, etc., or alien craft.
Actually, the big speculation now is a, what do you call it? That the military has some kind of high-tech blimp.
Yes.
That can move at extraordinary speed, off on a dime, and so but that's what's so frustrating to us.
Well, has such a craft ever been seen over New England? I know that the Hudson Valley sightings involved, as I understand it, some of these triangular craft or one of these Hudson Valley and over New York State.
I've seen it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I almost forgot. Why don't you tell us about your sighting?
Oh, God.
Well, we do have them, but what's also frustrating about that is the ones that we're receiving aren't least sighted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are now coming up and saying, well, I never talked about this before. This happened to be back in the 70s. And, I mean, if there was any evidence of any way to track this down and find out information, this is back in the 70s. It's all gone.
Yeah.
The evidence. So that's what's frustrating to us. I mean,
I would think.
What can you do with a case like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it in the files and see if anything else pops up to support it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like I can't prove that actually happened because it's not like there was anybody else with me, and I was in the middle of a graveyard, so...
Exactly.
Yeah.
What can you do?
So, Phil, tell us some of the details. I know that Steve's never heard the story. So.
Have I told you? Yeah, I told you.
Yeah.
I didn't give you any details.
We're usually running somewhere or doing something quickly, so you probably didn't give me any serious detail. But go ahead.
Well, no, I was taking night classes at the college I go to, and I was coming home, and I was taking like the long way home because I just felt like going for a drive, and so I decided, I'm going to pull over in the cemetery. I didn't really know why. I was like, it's kind of a bad idea, but for some reason I forced myself to turn, get off the road and then go to the cemetery where a couple of my relatives are buried. And so I was just standing there in front of my car, and I was like, why am I here? And then I looked up, and I saw 3 lights moving in unison, but they were, switching positions, but they were still staying in, a triangle form, and it flew over the highway that was near the graveyard where I was at, and then it flew over me, then it turned a sharp right and went towards this little town that's right near the cemetery. And I hadn't heard anything from it since. I hadn't heard any reports of anybody seeing anything. But I was very sure that it's not a plane because there are lots of planes around here because we have Green Airport down over here.
The state airport, yeah.
We have the state airport where it's not that big. So you can see a plane coming over the state, turning around, all of that.
But Boston too. The flight the approach patterns kind of take them over us depending where they're coming.
Yeah,
so there are a lot of planes.
Yeah, I didn't see any landing lights on it. It was too big to be a helicopter or even 3 helicopters.
What would you estimate the altitude was?
The altitude, I have no idea. This was 8 o'clock at night in the middle of winter, so I couldn't really tell.
Was it high up like an aircraft would be?
No, it was a little lower than an aircraft would normally be around here. It was I'd have to say maybe about a mile and a half.
Okay, mile and a half. Okay, yeah. The reason I asked that is because if there was something that was like a triangle floating in the area, right within the cemetery, you have the old J. Allen Hynek joke thing about the swamp gas.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, well, part of that is true because in areas of cemeteries, methane gas seeps through the ground, and if any type of heat ignition source is around, it can light the methane gas up, and they call them will-o-wisp.
It was too far away though. Where it started was 2-3 miles away from the cemetery I was at.
That's exactly why I asked what the distance was.
Oh yeah, it was that far away from me, but it was higher up.
That would rule that out.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was trying to think of a very possible explanation, and then after that happened, I was like, oh, all right. So I just got in my car and left.
Hey, believe me, I'm my own worst critic. I had a sighting about 2 years ago. I was sitting at a stoplight, and the sun was behind me, and I'm looking over this reservoir, and I see it looked like an egg. Looked like a white egg. And all of a sudden it dipped and disappeared. And I spent 3 weeks, I was driving myself crazy. I was going, what was it that I saw? It looked like an egg. And I realized, I said, what traveled from that direction? From where I was to Worcester, Massachusetts, is the Life Flight helicopter. What happened was the sun was behind me. And the sun was low and behind me, and it reflected off of the fuselage. The oval-shaped fuselage, that helicopter. And for a few seconds, it just looked like a white egg.
Huh.
Now, then all of a sudden it disappeared when it got out of the angle of the sun.
Okay. All right, we're going to pause there because we're late for our break, and we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com in New England's beautiful Blackstone Valley. And we'll be right back with our guest, Steve Fermani. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Groovin' Moose. Join me for the best mixed bag of rock music around. A weekly segment of the Beatles, too. It's called The Groove Line. It's on every Thursday night from 6 to 7 p.m. That's The Groove Line right here on WOON.
ON Radio. ON Worldwide.
Okay, and we wanted to tell you about Amazon Kindle, the marvelous e-reader from Amazon.com. And you can literally download books, magazines, newspapers to the tune of about 900,000 of them, including 4 of my books. And it's very, very easy to carry around. It's great for sitting on the beach in the summer. There's still plenty of summer left. And Amazon Kindle, check it out, Amazon.com. And you can get them for as low as $114. They're also on sale at Staples and several other stores. So check them out, Amazon.Kindle e-reader, the next step in publishing and reading. Okay. All right, and we are back with our guest, Steve Fermani, and we're talking about some very interesting New England UFO cases, one of which Ben was witness to just now, and Steve is the...
I was witness to a few. I've seen at least 3 UFOs in the last year.
Well, tell us about some more. Steve will tell you what's all about.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, sure. Okay. This is actually kind of a funny story because I went to go visit one of my girlfriend's friends at her college.
One of them.
Yeah, and we brought one of my friends along, and that was a very terrible decision. It ended up being a horrible night, and he made me drive him back to his college at 4 in the morning. So we were driving on, I think it was 95, out of Newport to go, and we were going towards Fall River, and my friend and I were talking, and he looks up and he goes, "Oh, great, another thing to add to this night." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "I just saw a UFO." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I don't know, I thought it was like a cell phone tower or something, or at least it could have been like a tower off in the distance, or whatever floats your boat, I guess. But from what I could tell, it looked like a big, shining light that was just going over the sky, so I thought it was a satellite. Not entirely sure.
So this is, you say 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, it was 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so the sun was coming up.
Well, no, it wasn't. The sun doesn't come till 6 during the winter.
Oh, that's true. Well, so what say you, Steve?
Could have been, what was the azimuth? How high up over the horizon?
It probably wasn't even that high up. Maybe, I'd have to say 500, 600 feet.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just a tower in the distance. I wasn't really sure.
Were you on one of the bridges when this happened?
No. I was actually just going into Fall River, when you go 95.
Fall River, Massachusetts, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But then I had another sighting, I think it was about a month ago. I went over my friend's house, and my girlfriend and I were driving back to her house, and she looked up, and she slowed down, and she was in front of me in her car, and I was like, why is she slowing down? So I looked up, and there were these 2 lights just hanging in the sky, over us, and it was fairly low, I'd say probably about 50 feet up from us, and I thought I saw a blinking light on one end of it, and I was like, no, that can't be. And my girlfriend was trying to call me, but her phone died. And she was like, did you see, when we got back to her house, she was like, did you see that? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what it was. And she was like, it didn't look like a helicopter or a plane. It just was hanging there in the sky. And I was just like, wow, it was weird. I can't really...
Sound or anything?
No, not even a sound. And my radio doesn't work, so I couldn't tell if the radio was getting messed up or not.
Yeah.
They're on your trail, Ben.
Yeah, I know. They're after me.
There's no end to what any possibilities if you think about it. Because now I'm not here to tell people what they saw, I'm here to rule out what the possibilities are. And from what you told me, I would have to investigate a little bit more, on those cases to really come up with a rational answer or come up as an unidentified.
I don't have Ben's luck when it comes to seeing UFOs. Let me remind everybody too. You can call in to the show today at 766-1240-1240 in the local area code 401. Also, nationally 800-449-1240.
Well, it's also hard to tell because it's every time I do this, it's always really late at night or really early in the morning. Like this sighting was like 1 in the morning, and like I'm always out at like random times of the night, so I always see like all these weird things. And I do have, as my dad said, I do have really good luck or bad luck, whatever you want to bestow upon this. But I have the luck that I have to see all this stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to see this, but I put up with it anyway.
And we make him buy all the lottery tickets in the family.
I did win.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty much it. If you won.
Yeah.
I did. I won $1. But
hey, it's better than nothing.
Those aliens haven't straightened that out,
Yeah, exactly.
So my only, as far as I can, looking all the way back, my only experience was just flying over Phoenix. Ben was on the other side of the plane.
What about when you and John were driving somewhere? You were driving somewhere. I don't remember where you were going, but you said you saw one.
Oh yeah, well there's some. He thought he
it.
did. He thought he did. Yeah.
Oh, well.
And well, I wanted to ask you, Steve, your opinion on this. Well, just to finish what I was saying, the Phoenix lights, of course, being the Phoenix, Arizona, the very famous lights that were seen, particularly about 10 years ago, I guess, 10 to 12 years ago, but do occasionally turn up. And we were flying to San Diego from Atlanta to do a program there, and we happened to be flying over Phoenix in the middle of the night, and I happened to look out the window, and there were these row of lights that were below us, but obviously somewhat above the city, or actually the mountains next to the city. And I've done my time in the military. I know what a flare looks like, and these were not flares. One of them separated. One of them appeared to land. I would say they were perhaps 10 to 12,000 feet high, although that's very difficult to judge, as you know. And, of course, we flew on toward San Diego, and I lost sight of them, but was really strange. One or two more appeared. One or two disappeared. It was quite remarkable, actually. And when we got to San Diego, we saw in the paper the next day that the Phoenix lights had been reported that previous evening. So there we were. Apparently, so that's my only story about UFOs.
Well, actually, if you go on to Bruce Maccabee's website...
Yeah, we know Bruce, yeah.
He has an interesting analysis on Phoenix lights.
Mm-hmm.
Because they did analysis of the original video of the Phoenix lights.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And they analyzed them and felt that they these were flares dropping behind the mountain range because they were disappearing at the same rate that a flare would as they were reaching the little peaks and everything in the mountain ranges.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that the triangular craft the people saw there had anything to do with the flare. What I'm saying is, just because people are seeing triangular craft doesn't mean military operations see.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I wanted to...
combination of both.
Yeah, perhaps. One thing I wanted to, that you mentioned I found very interesting, and you and Ben, during your conversation about the sighting from the cemetery, we were, I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but he was one of the speakers at the Parkersburg, West Virginia UFO, or rather paranormal conference, which embraced all areas of the paranormal. And he was, I don't know if you remember this, Ben, you were pretty young, but the fellow
I was like 9.
Yeah, you had, the gentleman was speaking about UFOs, and he had a drawing of a cemetery with sightings over this particular cemetery that a number of people had reported, especially after there had been a burial, like the day before or something. And he sort of tongue-in-cheek speculated that maybe the UFO was taking the guy to the hereafter or something like that, which I thought was something of a stretch, needless to say. But he did point out that there are a lot of sightings when people are in cemeteries of UFOs. And you yourself mentioned methane. Do you find that in New England that some of the reports you get are from people who are visiting cemeteries or going by cemeteries?
You know what compounds it now? It's all the paranormal investigations that you have. So a lot of times it's hard to figure out whether something's paranormal or alien.
Very true. Very true. Well, especially now because
have
people
to be careful with that.
Yeah, especially now people are seeing more and more of these orbs as opposed to metallic craft. How do you tell the difference? Yeah.
Usually when someone sends me an orb case, I ask them, well, before I can investigate this case, I think you'd be better off going to a paranormal investigation team, have them say whether it's paranormal or not, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, which raises the question, what are orbs in the paranormal sense? And
exactly.
There are a number of different explanations. People sometimes get pretty excited about them, and then it could be nothing. But another thing, too, and Ben's case, his other case of the early wee hours of the morning sighting there, sort of point this out, the affinity between UFOs and water in some cases. And I was going to ask you, of the cases you hear about in New England, do you have people telling you that, as in other areas, that UFOs are coming up out of or going into the water, whether it be a reservoir or the ocean or whatever?
Yeah, like in Shag Harbor.
Shag Harbor kind of thing.
But USOs are very rare.
Yeah.
Well, they're very rare, as he said.
Well, they are, yeah.
You were talking over him.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the audio isn't perfect. But I'm thinking in terms of the Shag Harbor incident in Nova Scotia.
Oh, that was an interesting case, yeah. I mean, that was probably the biggest USO case in history.
Oh, certainly, definitely. And matter of fact, we have my grandmother's, Ben's great-grandmother's people are from that area. And, Shag Harbor and Shelburne, that business. But it was that was quite a case. I believe it was was it in the 1960s, 67, 68?
Yeah, well, Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, there are a lot of USO sightings, like down in like the Caribbean, in places like that. And I guess we're not very lucky up here. Maybe it has to do with how big the harbor is, or whatever, or I don't know.
Well, you were right near Narragansett Bay, which is pretty good size.
Yeah,
but. Well, we're thinking in terms, too, of the Caribbean is right. We had one of our questions, contest questions, a couple of months ago had to do with an official of the government of Puerto Rico who was sitting on his porch one day overlooking the Mona Passage, and all sorts of UFOs were coming and going, and he was somewhat surprised, and his relatives all saw it, too. So, excuse me, the affinity between UFOs and water was first pointed out, I believe, by Ivan Sanderson back in the 60s and 70s. He was a marine biologist who turned UFO hunter and kind of paranormal guy, and he's considered...
He's kind of spread out. I think you get the most out off the coast off of California.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Well, this led to all kinds of speculation about secret bases under the water and all this business. I mean, as you said, we really don't know what these things are.
Well, anything's possible.
It's true.
They can make bases on the East Coast and make bases on the West Coast. Who knows if they don't have the ability to go underwater and drill tunnels under the earth and go from the East Coast to the West Coast underneath the earth?
Well, there's speculation about that as well. I suppose, as you say, anything is possible. Now, just getting back to New England and your work, about how many UFO reports come to MUFON from New England each year, would you say?
Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned 20-something just in July alone.
I think probably about 3 to 350.
Really? 300 to 350. That's pretty remarkable.
Wow.
And as you say, about 10 to 20% maybe proved to be difficult to explain. Okay. All right. Now, what was the story with the, was it the Marianne Shannonfield case in Western Massachusetts?
Shannonfield, yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, this is back when I was first at MUFON in Massachusetts. And this woman called me. I said, I had a UFO sighting. I've been having UFO experiences, and I can't explain them. I have things that are happening to me. The strange part of the whole thing was this woman had macular degeneration, so she was legally blind, about 99% blind, put it that way, and she could see electrical impulses, though. Like if she was looking at a refrigerator, you could see the electrical impulses.
Well, that's interesting.
Of these things, and this all happened to her. She wasn't born blind. As a little girl, she was supposedly had a UFO experience and was abducted. When she came back from this experience, that's when her eyesight started going downhill.
Okay.
Well, does she have like any cuts on her or anything, or any sort of burns? Or
No, because of most of the things that happened when she was a little girl.
Really, no scars or anything?
And when when I first started the case, she was married.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was out in Springfield, around Agawam, Springfield, Mass.
Oh, all right. Well, there are a lot of questions I had in mind too. I suppose there's room for one or two more. I've always wondered, when UFOs appear over cities, I'm thinking particularly of Bud Hopkins' latest book. Bud Hopkins, of course, for those who don't know him, is a major expert in UFO abductions, and he is kind of advancing in years, and you don't see too much of him lately.
Bud's been under the weather.
Yeah. But we saw him at the...
well.
Yeah. We saw him at the this same conference in West Virginia that this fellow was talking about cemeteries, and we sat down, and we sat down and we found a few minutes to ourselves, and he showed me an album of marks and gouges and scars, such as Ben was referring to, from people who had allegedly been abducted, and I was immediately struck by how similar these marks were to some things you see in poltergeist cases. Where people are victims of this, and you often wonder, as we said earlier, what exactly are we dealing with here? Is it alien, or is it, ghostly, if you want to use the term, or both, or what?
What kind of marks are we talking about? We're not talking about the scoop marks.
Sometimes there are scoop marks, yeah.
Because I had taken a witness to a dermatologist, and the witness had called scoop marks, and I had taken the witness down to a dermatologist, and scoop marks were, he said those are normal. With the normal function of the epidermis.
Really? Okay. Well, again, you do have to have other experts come in on these things, such as you say, dermatologists. Now, one thing I have wondered was in Bud's last book, which I wasn't prepared to talk about, so I don't know the title offhand, but it involved a witness, an abduction that took place in the middle of New York City, in a residential area of Manhattan, that was supposedly witnessed by some very big chiefs from the UN and a number of people, and who literally saw this woman being taken out.
In New York.
What? I'm sorry?
On the bridge in New York.
That one, and she was allegedly seen by a number of people literally being taken out of her window and up into a craft.
She was actually, this is how the case goes, she was actually, one of the people that witnessed it was a UN representative.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, supposedly somebody very, very high up in the, either in the Security Council or in the General Secretariat. Yeah, so that's his last book. And my question is, how come the whole city didn't see this? I mean, you got a thing floating over this apartment complex in Manhattan.
Well, it's like 2, 3 in the morning.
Well, that's true too, and it wasn't yesterday either. There
wasn't a lot of traffic at the time.
Okay, yeah, even in New York, there, I suppose there isn't, especially at that time, there wasn't much traffic.
Going across the bridge, it was kind of, going from one section in New York to the other.
Yeah. So you think that's just the explanation why people just don't, well, some of these things take place in more I suppose, reasonable hours of the day and night.
Well, there's also the bystander effect, too. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, like if people just don't report it because they don't. It's like that murder with that woman who got like stabbed like 10 times, and people were just like, they didn't do anything. It took them 2 hours to call the cops.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, it's like that.
Well, wasn't there...
Everyone's been involved, and most people, they see something, they say, well, nobody's going to believe me anyway.
Or they say, well, it's one of those things. Well, didn't a mass sighting take place over London like 2 months ago?
Oh, yeah, there's stuff going on all over the place. I mean, these mass sightings, I get things on those, from the Academy of Ufology all the time.
Yeah.
People, European countries, there's a lot of situations like that.
Well,
a lot of people seeing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, another New England case, or semi-New England case, because it was part of the Hudson Valley sightings, as I recall. There was, I spoke with one of the witnesses to that about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, and he said that he felt, what happened to him is that the sightings were going, everybody knew about them. And he was coming home from work, I guess he was in southwestern Connecticut, and he drove into his driveway, and it was winter, and the sun was setting, it was kind of dusk. But yet it was still light enough for him to see. So he got out of his car and he happened to look up, and there was a disc-shaped light hovering over one of his neighbor's houses. It was about maybe 200 feet in the air, but it wasn't very far away at all. And he said he began to walk, and it kind of came a little closer. And his whole experience was he wasn't frightened, he wasn't anxious about it. What he was feeling was that he felt singled out, and he felt as though, and his words, he said, I felt as though I was being tested, unquote. Wasn't that a funny way to put that? Have you ever heard anything like that before?
Well, different people can explain their experiences differently.
Uh-huh.
It's human nature. If I explain something to you, and you explain the same thing to me, we can come up with probably different ways of explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to know how to take things into context between. I mean, I've actually started getting interested in the just for that purpose. I've started getting interested in the way people talk in New England. People in Vermont, people in Massachusetts, people in Connecticut, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
There's a difference. Everybody says things differently.
Yeah, they do. I'm going to stop you right there, Steve, because we're down to our last few minutes, and I want to give you a chance to talk about the Exeter UFO Festival coming up on Labor Day weekend.
Okay, great. But we're going to have a lot of fun September 3rd. We got the best lineup of speakers we've ever had. Stan Friedman, Kathy Martin, Richard Dolan. That's the first to have Richard Dolan here.
Yeah, that's good. We don't know him.
Richard's, he does, written a few books on, what do you do after disclosure?
Oh, well, we know who he is. We just don't know him personally.
Yeah, well, I've never met Richard myself.
Uh-huh.
This is going to be a great opportunity for me to meet him and speak with him. I'm ecstatic. I'm excited about this. To be even invited to speak with people of this quality.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait.
So it's a real fun event. I remember Ben and I went last year, and we were, the whole town is involved, and the merchants get involved.
It was. Hopefully, we have more luck with your equipment this year, right?
Yeah, well, Ben and I plan to be there, and our little, we're going to have a podcast booth. Unfortunately, the hours aren't such that I wish it were Sunday night. We could do a live CBS broadcast from there, but we'll be doing a podcast. And so come and meet us there. You can meet Steve and meet us and all these major figures in the UFO community. And
we also have Jen and Jeff Finn, who I was interviewed by them last year, right after the Exeter Festival. they're originally from Boston. They're a husband and wife team doing a documentary called Strange Septembers.
Oh, yes.
At the Exeter Festival, this will be the first ever showing of this documentary.
Oh, that'll be great.
And I'm really excited. Jen Finn is also a computer website designer.
Mm-hmm.
She is offered to do the New England MUFON website, to redesign it and run it for us at no charge.
Excellent. Steve, I'm afraid we're flat out of time, but thank you very much. We're going to be promoting the festival at ExeterUFOFestival.com, and thank you so much, Steve. We'll be talking to you soon.
Hey, I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.
So, many thanks to our producer, the much revered Steve Bianchi. We'll see you right here next Monday, August 8th, when Ben and I will welcome back the great novelist and Mayan expert DeEarlon for a look at 2012 and beyond.
All right, in the meantime, tune into our live Sunday evening CVS radio edition in Boston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Seattle on www.newskyradio.com and your AOL radio app if you have an iPhone. On August 7th, my dad and I will host an open-line show to catch up on our ever-growing emails to answer your questions.
Okay, and remember, we'll have to check out BehindTheParanormal.com for podcasts. We'll leave you this evening with a thought from the 20th century American novelist and poet William S. Burroughs. Quote, after one look at this planet, any visitor from outer space would say, I want to see the manager, unquote.
Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we'll see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.